Yeah, I honestly don't know a whole lot. Taylor's the big computer guy when it comes to all that stuff.
He's the guy.
I try,
He's the
I
guy.
try.
Well, that's good. How's things been going? It was in Red Lodge, right? We saw you
Yeah.
in Red Lodge, or was it?
Yep, Red Lodge.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. I've been out of the country for a little while and then just
Oh,
kind of got back and we were super stoked. We're actually leaving on a hunt on Friday for
oh,
Nevada mule deer. So we're
oh,
really
wow.
just we're super stoked that we kind of like had everything lined up perfectly with this.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
that's cool. So you got what part of Nevada are you going?
I'm going like near south of Elko, so I have that
Oh,
101 to 109.
yeah.
We'll see.
You
I've
get a
I've
good
heard it's
mule
like
deer in velvet.
yeah, that's that's the goal.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've heard there's good potential out there, just scarcity.
Yeah, I think you got to cover a lot of ground. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Assuming you have decent optics, but that's
yeah,
probably more important than anything you have is probably your binoculars or spotting scope or whatever you're using. But
yeah. I actually just picked up a Zeiss Gavia. It's
oh,
like the nicest spotting scope I've ever owned. I'm like scared to like use it and hold it. I'm like,
yeah,
but we'll see. Hopefully it works. It's not a Swirl, but I think it'll get the job done.
Zeiss in the day was I mean, they were the thing, and I think they've built some stuff lower end to compete in that market, but their top end stuff is pretty good.
Yeah, the that Gavia was like their competitive one, so it's all Japanese glass, not the
Oh,
European. And I've heard the clarity is very nice, but it's just not comparable to like European glass.
yeah, no. I have a friend of mine that builds. So he started Night Force, the scope company, and
Yeah.
then so that's in Orfino where I'm from.
Hmm.
Jeff actually moved to Orfino because my brother was guiding there, and Jeff was going out with my brother. So he moved to this company, started that there, and then there was a mix-up on the owner is actually from Australia, and so he kind of wanted more stuff in Australia. Jeff lost the whole thing financially, but he started a company called Zero Compromise. So he went to over to Europe for a bit and worked for Collis, which is a kind of a branch of the Swarovski,
Yeah.
and yeah, so he ended up basically getting connections for that European glass that they have, and it. Yeah, I love my Night Force stuff. I absolutely love it. But when you lay it down side by side, and I don't know
Yeah.
if it matters. I don't know if it really matters at that level. I don't know if it really matters or not because I mean you still see the thing.
Yeah.
It's just
Um,
the clarity of color and the separation of color and things becomes a
Yeah.
big deal.
It's yeah.
no, 100%. I didn't really notice like what good glass quality was until I actually went to the Swarovski factory in Austria.
Oh wow,
And when I was there, they have like the BTXs as like the like you can look through them at like the Alps. And I'm
yeah,
looking through and I'm like, and they're like, oh, look up there. And they're like, okay, do you have here's our comparison. They pull out this like unbranded one and it was a Leica, but they pull out the unbranded
right,
spotting scope and put it next to it. And it's like I'm looking between and they're like, oh, do you see that bush? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, come look at it at the Leica, and the Leica, you can't see it.
yeah.
I was like, okay, so there is something to it.
There's definitely so you were there then. So Jeff worked over there, and I guess Collis is right across the street. I'm not
Hmm.
sure, but that's so he worked on that side. There was the MOA scope that Collis built, and Jeff's the designer of that. Basically, that scope is a Night Force scope with Collis glass. It's a pretty good scope.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty penny though, right?
Yeah, and that's the Zero Compromise.
Yeah,
Is you have that rugged durability that Night Force is famous for, but you have that in uh, with glass that's really uncompromisable. It's the best anyway. That's why they call it Zero Compromise.
yeah. I I've been kind of messing around trying to figure out like what optics. I mean, I'm really just a bow hunter. Like Taylor, he's the rifle guy in this kind of situation. So
Yeah,
but I like have a decent rifle setup. But as I'm looking through, I'm like, oh, maybe this brand would be nice on the rifle or this one. I'm
I
like,
mean, it always gets better. Like
yeah,
it's, you can be driving the nicest car in where you think you are, but there's always going to be someone that pulls up next to you in a newer truck or so. There's always, you can always go up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so archery. I mean, I'm an archery guy. I mean, that's kind of what it is. But my deer hunting, it's two different worlds. Elk hunting to me is a full contact sport. It is exciting. It is whatever. But usually by the end of September, 1st of October, I am beat. And so my deer hunting becomes much more of a relaxing, go out, sit on a ridge, walk some ridges, move around. But I'm very slow to move. I glass, I sit, I eat sandwiches. You know, I do all those things that you don't do during archery season. And
No.
so I use them as like polar opposite type things. The deer hunting kind of winds me down. And it's actually a kind of a time for my wife and I. We've literally packed in like Lucky Charms and milk into a ridge and eaten bowls of cereal on the top of a ridge while
That's
glassing
awesome.
or glassing deer.
That's sweet. Yeah, I've actually never really have hunted like an early season archery deer hunt because like in Montana we just got the general season deer, general season elk. You spend September for elk, October, November for deer. And so now I'm very interested to see like the differences of like before I have the fatigue of elk season and then I go deer hunting. Now it's like, oh, I have all my energy, I have all my prep, and I can go deer hunt. We'll see what happens, kind of thing.
I do think the deer can be that time of year. They're still feeding. I mean, they're still that early season. They're still feeding a little bit, so they're a little more mobile or a little more out than they are. You start getting them in September, they start getting a little pressure and they disappear. I mean, they will just they go nocturnal and they sit in a bush. I mean, they literally sit and they just sit through a whole day, find a place where they can, you know, I mean, they literally move. They find a place where they can have a bush and a water hole, and they don't move. They just, and then when you do bump them, shit, they can go miles, and then they find another bush and water hole.
Yeah.
But I think early
It's
season you have a better chance.
I've been doing like a ton of research and they're saying that like early season they're moving, they still have velvet, they like will kind of rebed and move around still. They're just fattening up. And like I was super like interested in kind of like seeing the behavioral differences and they're just I mean, they're more visible. They're not really super worried about other bucks. They're like kind of hanging out together and just right before they start actually trying to get hard horned and the ruts come in and all that.
And that's an advantage with them being in a larger group. Like they will have other bucks, but there'll be 3-4 other bucks in those kind of groups. And so all it takes is one buck to show themselves, and that can kind of give up the other 3 or whatever's there. I've never hunted August for deer. I have a couple friends that have here in Idaho, and that's the same kind of thing. My daughter-in-law, she drew Unit 44, which is out of Fairfield, kind of central part of the state. She drew that this year for deer. She drew it 2 years ago. This is the crazy thing. She drew it 2 years ago, got it. You have to sit out a year, and then she put it in this year and she drew it again. It's like
That kind of looks crazy.
Yeah,
it's a 1% chance to get it, and she did it twice.
That's exactly what kind of happened with me. I did the second drawing chance in Nevada, 0.0 anything, and I just got the notification at TAC like, "Oh, you pulled Nevada." And I look over at Taylor and I'm like, "Dude, I just pulled Nevada." And he's like, "I hate you."
Well, see, I've never drawn a tag. I've never drawn one ever. Like, I've been putting in since 18 years old in 1985, and I mean, there's some years and miss and here and there you might, but I've never drawn a tag. Put in for deer and elk, second chances, all that. Never drawn. Here she draws twice in a row.
You're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like statistics or anything, because I saw this thing where I forget what state but someone had like a theory that like because they're trying to like promote women in the outdoor industry that like you have a higher % chance if you're a woman at certain tags.
Right now, I would buy anything. You tell me space aliens are the ones taking the thing. I'm gonna say, yep, you're probably right, because
it's all the algorithm.
I am the absolute failure when it comes to drawing tags.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, I think Taylor, you want to hit us with a normal intro and we can jump right in.
I think
really
you should hit the intro for once.
All right, sweet. All right. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Hunt Swiftly podcast. Today we're joined by Joe from Slayer Calls. We're really excited to have him. We connected with him at TAC Red Lodge and we invited him on. He's grateful enough to give us like his time, and we're gonna ask him some questions about Slayer Calls, and we're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, sounds good.
That is all improvised.
Yep.
All improvised.
Yep. Swifties usually are.
That's the best kind. Just fly from your seat of your pants.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always.
Swifty's our usual intro guy. He has it all dialed in with the script.
Well, I'm far from dialed in.
It's all right.
Sweet. So, Joe, do you want to just give like a quick intro for the listeners?
Yep. My name is Joe McCarthy. About 4 years ago, I met with Bill Ayer, who's the owner of Slayer Calls. We ran into him at the it would be the Salt Lake show down there in it's the expo. In fact, he just texted me, so that's what was my distraction there. So I run into him. Actually, what happened is my son had gone and done a podcast with Christy Titus. They talked about turkeys, and he was walking back, and Cody saw the shiny duck calls on the table, and it drew him in because duck hunting is that's kind of where our foundations, I think, in hunting, I think honestly for everybody kind of starts, because it's your kid. You can go out there and shoot ducks. It's the first time handling a gun, all that kind of stuff. But so Cody met him. He talked to Cody about, if Cody could help him. At that time, Cody was kind of tied with Rocky Mountain Game Calls. And kind of my whole family's kind of been tied with Rocky, with the Jacobsons for a while, just because we're from Orfino. And we have a lot of connections. My brother was one of the first ones to build calls for Rocky before Rocky even sold his patent to Primos. And so Cody kind of passed, but he said, "Hey, my dad just retired. I worked for 30 years as a cop in Idaho. Basically, I guess it'd be like 13 years in rural part of the state, and then the other 17 years in the city of Boise." And so I moved down in 2003. From northern Idaho or central Idaho to Boise and finished my career down there. But I had just retired. So Cody, he took me to him, didn't tell me what he was doing, but he goes, "Hey, I want you to meet this guy." I went and met him. Bill said, "Hey, you're the guy that's going to build elk calls for me, huh?" And I was like, "What?" And anyway, it kind of started from there. And so all the elk calls, basically my son and I designed and, put out there. We redesigned the frame of the call there, which was kind of interesting. Every other call in the market is basically a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch design or a 5/8 by 5/8 design, just the width and the depth of latex. We actually went 1/2 inch wide by 5/8 long, trying to take advantage of a little more latex in the 5/8 calls, because the more latex you have, the more like richness in the sound you can get. But the width is what gives you control. And so 5/8 calls, when you're looking at people that have them, if you can run them, they sound really great because they have more latex. They're just harder to run. It's a lot more like a turkey call, where you have sections across the middle. So you got to kind of divide the call up into thirds. A 1/2 inch call, you don't have to do that. It's all straight down the middle. Yeah. Turkey hunting is kind of a 5/8 thing. That's why they've all done that. And I'm getting really crazy technical and all this stuff, but yeah. So we redesigned that, and then we did a tongue and groove thing on the inside of the frame. So in the past, you've had this structural ridge that goes around the outside of the frame, and you bend it over, it makes a U, and you have that ridge that runs around the outside. Well, we inverted the downside to go up, so we got a tongue and groove type thing to hold the latex better. And so we like to think that our calls have a lot more longevity than some of the other ones. Not that the other ones are bad, but yeah, we're trying to get longevity out of that. What we found though, I think we get longevity, but from when you have two ridges like this versus this becomes thinner. Yeah. So the actual profile of the metal frame in your mouth is a thinner thing. By being thinner, you're actually able to get to the latex easier with your tongue to manipulate it, which we think gives you more control. And so, and I think it's also just when it's not as thick, it's more comfortable in the mouth as well. So that's kind of what we did. We designed that and kind of built that, and now we're just kind of trying to grow it. We've done some things with the tubes as far as adding acrylic, which amplifies sound, doesn't change it, doesn't alter it. There it is right there.
It is.
That's the yellow one too. That's the one I use too.
Huge fan of it.
Yeah.
That's what drew me in. I saw that acrylic and I was like, ooh, that looks really cool.
Yeah.
So kind of getting back to the beginning, what did you break like elk and turkey calls before like working with Slayer, or did that kind of just like naturally occur? Or
No, it was something I've been doing for a while. So like I said, way back, like in the late 80s, early 90s, when Rocky was making his pallet plate, and all this was done by hand back there. It was a whole different process. But my brother actually was one helping him stretch that. So I was like, oh, how do and I kind of learned, kind of watching Rocky, and then you hang out with Rocky Jacobson enough and the people around him, and you kind of start learning how to do this. And ultimately what I did is it became a more of a thing about necessity. So if you're out hunting and a reed went bad, I didn't want to have to go back into town to get another reed. So I bought the presses and stuff, and I made reeds in camp. And what I would do is, if I wanted more higher notes, I would do things to stretch the things higher and get higher notes. If I wanted more buzz or whatever was working, I was trying to build calls to fit that. And I kind of just did it on my own.
Incredible.
So you were like actually in the field and you're hearing these different elk communicate, and you're like, oh, they are have more of a gravel in the throat. I'm gonna stretch that, do that, or it's like super high. That's really cool.
That's
just matching it. You come back from camp, it's noon, 1 o'clock through 2 o'clock, whatever. It wouldn't be. I actually killed more elk between 10 and 2. But when you come back in the afternoon, or if you are back in camp, or you come back at night, in my base camp, I had my presses, and I would make those calls to try to match that bull at that time. And I did a lot of weird stuff. Some worked, some didn't. I've actually posted some stuff online where I made some calls that sounded like elk I heard in the field, and then I posted online and had people go, I don't know who you are, or if you're just learning how to bugle, but that doesn't sound right. And it's like, yeah, so it's funny because the elk that my wife killed last year, it actually sounds like a pterodactyl. It doesn't sound like an elk. It's pretty crazy sounding.
I think my favorite saying is that the worst bugler on the mountain is the actual elk.
That is a fact.
Remy Warren always talks about that. It's like, if you hear something bugling horribly, it's probably the biggest elk on the mountain.
That's it. That's 100%.
Yep.
Elk by mid-September, they suck at bugling. Now, this is one thing about calling. I get this in seminars, is that cows don't. Cows stay consistent all year long for the most part. I mean, they'll make some crazy sounds once in a while, but their consistency in what they do is much more consistent year round. And I think
like vocalization consistency,
vocalization, and how they sound from their note, from the more, it's that that kind of, or that the way they talk. I think it's much harder to cow call than it is to bugle. I think you can be a terrible bugler and you can get elk to respond. If you can't cow call right, elk are going to figure that out.
Yeah,
that's very true.
So that's actually fascinating that you would actually mimic the elk in the field. I might still try to get over that.
Yeah.
Would you do like the same thing with like turkeys, or is that just an elk thing, you think?
It's just an elk thing. I've made turkey calls, and the reality is, I don't know. I'm not going to say turkey hunting is easier. I live in Idaho, where turkey hunting doesn't have the pressure that they have in Georgia or Florida or wherever. And so I think our turkeys, I'll start a whole bee's nest if I sit there and say turkey hunting is easy.
I'll say it for you. Turkey hunting is so much easier than elk hunting.
Our podcast is pretty notorious for being not super into turkeys. Swifty has a personal vendetta against turkeys.
Yeah.
I like turkey hunting because it gets me out into where we hunt turkeys is literally the same place we hunt out.
Yeah.
And so it gets me out in the field in those same places. And there's actually times I have found wallows or I found trails or whatever where I was actually turkey hunting, not elk hunting. And that's because you're out in the spring and it keeps you moving, it keeps you hunting. Setups. We hunt the same way. I don't hunt from a blind. I don't hunt.
Yeah.
I move. I hunt them just like I do elk. We actually have a video coming out before too long of this year's turkey hunt where we're doing that.
Nice.
But yeah, turkey hunting, as far as the reeds go, it wasn't as imperative. When I'm elk hunting, it's a lot more. I'm more dialed in.
Yeah. I've been turkey. So what kind of like we started this podcast is like I'm a pretty new hunter. And like my first year ever hunting when I was 18, it was like I went out turkey hunting and I was like, oh, this is kind of like elk hunting. And then I went actual elk hunting and I was like, okay, this is so much. It's like you're saying, like a full contact kind of sport. You're locked in, you're moving, you're constantly following them, moving around with them. I feel like with turkeys, like sometimes you can move towards them, but then they'll be like right over there and then you sit and wait.
Yeah. And honestly, you got to kind of face it. If I go in and blow a turkey setup, I'm not that mad. It's more fun and I'm going to go find another turkey and I'm going to go do that. Elk hunting, you spend a lot of time trying to get into an elk or an indoor group of elk, and you blow that setup and just by your location, you may not get another chance. And so, yeah, the stakes are a little higher, I think, when I'm elk hunting.
Yeah, I think we're three big game guys completely agreeing on this. And there's some turkey hunter listening to this being like,
yeah,
these guys don't know.
And if you're a turkey hunter, like good for you, man. But like for me in the springtime, I'd rather be bear hunting.
Oh.
And then fall rolls around and elk and deer are my priority. So it's hard to fit turkey into the schedule for me.
I like bear hunting. Bear hunting's fun. This is the funny thing though. I guided for bears for several years, and I've never shot one.
Really?
I guide for them. I take people out and they shoot them. I've caped them. I've done all the work you're supposed to do as a guide. I've just never shot one myself. I usually have somebody giving me meat and stuff. And
do you just not have an interest, or is it like you're looking for the right one kind of thing?
The thing with turkey hunting is that you can call,
yeah.
and the bear hunting, you're not calling.
Yeah, I will say
calling.
I will say that this year I actually did call in my bear.
Oh.
Yeah, with a predator call.
With a predator call? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done that hunting. I mean, hunting where you called, you make sounds and elk sounds or cow sounds, whatever they are, and you call bears in. We actually I actually was attacked by a cougar. This has been probably 8 years ago, but that's kind of what happened. Is elk was coming down the hill and I'm setting up on the elk and I can't figure out what's going on with the elk because it's acting like it's winding something and I'm upwind. It's not, there's no way it's me. I'm looking at the elk. I got my arrow on my nock. My brother's beagling behind me. And all of a sudden that bull blows out and goes past me, kind of off from my right to left up the hill. And that cat ran right up the creek bank and literally hit me with his tail as he went by me. And I was like, whoa, like that happened. And then it turned around and it was an older cat that had a bunch of porcupine quills in its mouth and stuff. Fish and game guy said that he thought the thing was just looking for an easy meal and probably I was easier. So I ended up killing it at about 4 yards.
With a bow?
With my bow. Yeah. Shot it as it was coming into me. It was literally running at me and I shot him like a carp. You ever bow fish? That's exactly how I shot him.
That's awesome.
Just snapshot him and hit him right here and it came out down the pelvis. So it went vertically through his body. Literally died at like 3 feet from me.
Damn.
Did you get to keep the cat?
Yeah, actually we did. We tagged it and took it out, checked it with the fish and game biologist, told him the story, and he's like, "Yeah, I can kind of see that." The cat was 9 years old, and so it was a quarter inch off of Boone and Crockett as far as the skull measurement.
Wow.
I have the skull right back here, but
it
was a crazy story. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Is there is there quite a bit of cats where you're at with with your elk hunting? Just kind of big cruise around.
Yeah, we have Idaho's full of predators. So you have bears, cats, and wolves. So we've had all three, at some time come in. I've had less issues with bears. I've seen them come in. Usually they see you. They're hunted fairly well here in Idaho, so they go away. Cats, especially the younger ones, they're not as tuned in that you're a hunter. The one that actually attacked me was old, but most of the time it's the younger ones that are the ones that are the problem. And then we've had wolves sneak in, kind of surround, because they're chasing the elk the same as we are. And so we've had them come in. We had my wife had a dog come in, I mean, literally 10 yards behind her and do that like snort thing that dogs do, that kind of thing. And it was a big white kind of a gray wolf, and everybody's like, why didn't you shoot it? And it's like, by the time you see it, and they are gone. When when they see you, see them, they split. But it's a little unnerving when you see them. You just get flashes of them. But
Yeah.
or bears are a little slower. You see the bear, it's like, oh, there's a bear, and the bear looks at you like, oh, that's a guy, and they walk. You kind of go the other way. Cats are a little more sneaky.
Yeah. I haven't personally had any issues with cats, but I've had my run-in or two with the grizzly out here in Montana. But those ones are a little bit more like, oh.
Yeah. I've seen grizzlies. So I hunted the panhandle of Idaho, and obviously grizzlies up there.
Yeah.
I've seen them at a distance. I've never had a run-in with one.
Yeah, I was fortunate where I came around this bank and I look on this hillside, and on this knob there's a sow and cub just hanging out there, going into the exact basin that I had heard this elk bugle from.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys can have that one. I'm gonna walk that way.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing over in eastern Idaho, over there by Wyoming. They say obviously that those grizzlies hear you bugling, and they kind of key on what's going on. You shoot your elk, you make a pack out, and you come back, and the grizzlies will they'll pull it down from the trees, or they'll do whatever, but they kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
What's going on.
I had a deer tag down in Island Park.
Yeah.
Last year. And I was at the trailhead, and I saw this group of guys go up, and that group of guys they killed a bull and got attacked by a grizzly. So they were the ones that got attacked last year in Island Park.
Oh, wow.
And I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, that's way too close for comfort for me.
Yeah, it's a thing. I carry it's kind of funny. So I did the police thing, right? I did that for 30 years. Carried the pepper spray when it first came out. In fact, there's actually an article in like the 1993 Spokane paper that was about me pepper spraying a Brahma bull, because it was typical county work, right? County deputies, you do whatever. We got called into it where two bulls had gotten out of their pens and they were fighting, and the one was goring the other, and the rancher's like, hey, I want these off my property. And I'm like, dude, I'm a cop, I'm not a cowboy. But I sprayed that because I'd heard the pepper spray works for bears, and so I sprayed that bull. And I haven't sprayed people, but I seem to never have done that part. But I've watched guys get sprayed a lot, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
No.
And so I'm a big proponent of carrying my gun.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it going, I practice with a gun a lot more than I would practice. I think most people buy pepper spray or bear spray and they don't ever try to use it. I think if you're going to carry it, you should buy 2 or 3 of them, and you should practice with save one for taking them out. But you need to practice with it, because if you're downwind and you spray whatever you're spraying, you're going to get sprayed too. And so no matter what happens when anybody deploys pepper spray, everybody in the room gets it. And so understanding that feeling of, oh God, that kind of burns, that hurts. And the fact that a bear may or may not, that Brahma bull, I was spraying with stream, and their eyes are about that big. And so I'm spraying that stream into its eyes, and it took several minutes before it actually started to like go away from me. It kind of got mad. And I think, my gun, I carry a 10 and
Yeah.
Springfield, you know, I got 16 rounds. That's a lot of discouragement. You don't have to kill the
Mhm.
bear. You give it some discouragement to go away.
Yeah, the loud, and just hears the loud sound, and it hopefully will just cruise away.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
I think you practice with a gun. People practice
Yeah.
with. They
Yep.
don't practice with pepper spray. You know,
No.
I practice. I mean, cops practice with it all the time, and they hate it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not the you know end all like everybody may think it is. Because I've
Yeah.
actually sprayed at dogs. You know, like I said, Brahma bulls, people.
Yeah.
It's kind of variable in the way it works.
I will say bear spray does suck to get in your face.
Yeah.
It sucks really badly.
I've been downwind of it a couple times, and it's never a good time.
Because it will. It chokes you out.
Oh yeah.
You can't see. You know,
Oh.
it's a thing.
Yeah. And also another thing is like when people strap it on like their pack or their chest harness or something, it's like like my friend did it and he threw his backpack into the truck and pop.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And then it's like people that you know comes with the little holster, they strap it on somewhere. They never try to pull it out of the holster, so they're gonna have some cord caught on it. Yeah, like it's not. The pepper spray itself might be an effective deterrent, but all the things pulling the lock off of it, all that stuff to get to the point where you're actually deploying it, like people don't think about that.
Yeah, whatever you're using, you got to practice.
Yeah.
You have to practice.
Yeah.
And I just don't think people necessarily practice with. You get a gun, first thing you do is buy bullets and go to the range.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
people don't do that with pepper spray.
Yeah. Speaking of practice, one of the really big questions I have for you is when you're practicing calling, what do you kind of recommend, like one newer callers or just in general, like people that want to practicing it more proficient with their calling? Because I feel like everyone knows the trick. You go around in the car and you start bugling, but I feel like there has to be like a little bit more than just that.
I think it's listening to elk. I mean,
Mhm.
really listen to elk, listen to where that note starts and listen to that. You get a cow sound and just one call and you listen to it over and over and over and get the pace, the speed at which it comes out, the duration, the length at which it comes out, and then the volume and how it comes out. I think a lot of people, when they're bugling or they're calling, it's all kind of the same thing over and over and over. Mixing up your calling to be able to function really low volume, really high volume, and the pace and all the lengths and stuff. It all means something. It's not what you say; it's how do you say it. And you know, when I say hey or I say hey, right? Um, they're different meanings, and it's the same thing in elk. You know, they bugle or they. So if it comes out loud and short, it's much more aggressive than long and quiet. And you know, if I am, you know, you're in an area where elk are being pressured by a lot of people, and I hunt a lot of public ground in Idaho, so they're pressured. You know, elk don't necessarily go, wow, they are a lot quieter. It's think of it if you're in your house, right? And you think there's an intruder in your house and you're trying to find your wife, you know, you're like, hey, where you at? You know, you're trying to like sneak around the house and you're using that kind of tone of voice. And I think elk kind of do the same thing. If they think there's an intruder in the area, they're going to be a little more quiet, trying to talk to each other back and forth, versus when they know, you know, now you're down in 6th and Main in downtown Boise, and you see a dude you don't like, and you're going to get it on with him. You know, it's a whole different volume, it's a whole different pitch, it's a whole everything. So being able to listen to an elk and what they do, but then be able to change that 3-dimensionally on how you call, because so many people are this. When you're in your car, it's like the same thing, up and down, and nothing wrong with that. That's where you start, but being able to vary that a lot, you know, in what you do, try to speed it up and do whatever. But
And so you like practice different tonages, different like pitch volumes, and as well as duration. You're kind of saying is like, so
yeah,
it's
because
sometimes like short and fast, sometimes like long, quiet. Okay.
if I'm locating, if I'm an elk and I'm locating and I'm trying to just say, hey, where are you? I'm going to drag that out high and long because I'm trying to get that note out to say, where
Yeah, it's
are
like
you?
saying like, hey.
100%. It's
Okay.
100% it. Versus you're across the street from the guy and you're pissed. It's like, hey, it's short, it's loud, it's short, it's aggressive. And so understanding that, it's like, again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And cow calls are the same way. I mean, you get those cow calls around, you'll hear it all the time. Yeah. Then you hear, yeah. So it has a different meaning. So understanding that, being able to change all that up. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do.
Yeah. Do you have like, so obviously you're going to have to be in the field. You're going to have to listen to elk. Do you have like some things that you kind of wish you knew while you were like starting to get into the process of like trying to understand elk or
Yeah.
something? Or is it just, you got to go and you just got to figure it out?
The one thing with today, and I mean, going someplace where there's elk and listening to them is one thing. I mean, that is 100% the best way to do it. But most people don't have that. YouTube now, though, has a ton of it. And no offense to any of the, I mean, my son has a video thing on YouTube about how to call elk, which is great. I mean, and they teach you how the mechanics of working your mouth. But listening to a caller call is not, in my thing, the best thing. There is a ton of video of people with elk in Estes Park or wherever they're at, where they're filming elk. Listen to those elk and listen to that. And then the cow calling side, everybody wants to bugle, but like I said, I think you can suck at bugling and still do okay calling elk in. But if you're going to cow call, if you're going to do that, make sure you're doing that right. And it's not, it's not this like up and down. Sometimes you get some sounds that are that and I can when I'm hunting, I hear a bugle, I'll question it because I've said that's not an elk, and I've gone down there and it's an elk that's bugling. But the cow sounds.
It's hard.
I can, and I hear somebody cow call, and I know it's the person.
Are you more of like a diaphragm call for cow calling, or are you more of like an external?
Diaphragm call. And not that I disagree with using the external calls. The external calls are actually easier, and if you don't operate a diaphragm call well, I would use an external call because it's a lot easier to use, and you're going to get the sound. That hoochie mama, it killed a lot of elk. Now it's repetitive and the same sound over and over and over, but it starts, it's a straight note. It doesn't do a bunch of up and down stuff. It's and I think that's what that's what a cow does. And there's a nasal thing that you can get with externals that sound really good. I like when I'm calling, though, to be able to hit higher notes. I think it travels better, and I can do that better with a diaphragm call. Plus, I have a diaphragm working, so I'm not switching them back and forth with a lot of stuff. And I do switch diaphragms a lot, but I don't switch to other things a lot.
Are you do you have like a specific like diaphragm that's kind of your go-to, like this works really well for cows and this works really well for bugling, or is it just kind of like mixing it up?
Yep. I think there's a lot of marketing that goes into this is the big bowl, this is the little bowl, this is the cow call, this is the whatever. All diaphragm reeds should all make the same sounds. They all are going to be able to bugle. They're going to do them in different ways, though. And it goes back to it's not really the size of the elk, it's the emotional tone of the elk. And, my wife killed a spike, and we heard these two bulls going, and we picked the big sounding elk, and we went after it, and it was a spike. She shoots at 7 yards frontal. It dies right there. And we are sitting on it, and I start bugling because the other elk's still bugling. So I bugle, and that elk came right into us at 30 yards, and it's a huge 6-point. And it sounds like a scrawny thing. But the different reeds, if you have a light, like very light latex, light stretch reed, it's going to give you lighter, softer sounds than a heavy reed with a heavy stretch. And so having the range in between allows you to change that emotional level
Okay.
a lot. And so I try to use them all, and I use Slayer calls because I build them, and that's my commercial thing. The way I build a frame, the way Phelps builds a frame, the way Travis O'Shea with Wappi River builds a frame, or Mile High down there with Dieseling. everybody builds them a little differently. And if you can get different sounds, it goes back to what I said in the very beginning. I'm trying to match those elk in what they're doing. And the more variability you have in your toolbox, the better you can match.
Yeah, I think we had that kind of conversation when I was able to talk to you at TAC, and you're kind of like going through and I was telling you like I've been using the Maverick or the Pitch Black for like the past few years, and like it works. And then I started to try yours, and it made it's like a completely different mechanic, I feel like, out of Slayer.
Yeah.
But once I figured it out, it like actually sounds a little better. I have more like you can kind of work it, but it's a different mechanic, and I think it's based off of that design change that you guys made.
It could be. I just think that being able to recreate sounds, and when I'm listening to elk, I listen to what they're doing and I try to match that sound, and having the ability in my pocket to do that versus just the one call. When I was brand new, Rocky had a brown reed, and I can't remember what they called it. It was the one that was it's literally the most popular reed ever made. It was a brown pallet plate call. I carried that thing with me everywhere. That I didn't buy any other reeds. That was it. I will say this, that I think in today's world, because of the way they build frames, and I'm not saying we're all building them the same kind of way, but it's a lot more specific. I mean, you can dial to thousandths of an inch, and so the consistency is better. And so with that, I think being able to pick a range of calls, you have a better chance of making all those work than you did in the day when they were kind of handmade in a way. Yeah. The art side of that is amazing. Those guys that did that kind of stuff, but it's a lot harder to build back the way they did it back then.
So when you go out, how many calls are you taking with you?
A dozen.
Okay. Just all different? Or are you taking duplicates?
Yeah, okay. No, everybody says it looks like I have Skittles in my pocket because they're all different colors, and I'm taking out a lot. I take out a bunch of calls, and goes back to the cop in me. 1 is 0, 2 is 1, and so I will carry, what we've carried in our lineup. What I've made, we have 7 calls now. We have 8 because we have the muscle shell in there. Mm-hmm. But so 1 is 0. So if I have 1 of each of those, it means I have none. And so I carry enough to have 2 of each, 1 of each. So in case something does go wrong, I have a backup. But I do. And Bill, he thinks it's funny because we'll be calling and he'll watch, turn around, and I'm digging through my pockets and I'm changing colors because the elk is changing. We're now closer or farther away, or something's happening. And so I'm changing the reeds so I can get different emotions at them. And,
so do you kind of have it, sorry to interrupt, but on the colors, do you kind of have it like labeled like this color is like a deeper raspier and this one's like a very light one, so you can kind of like immediately go to like that color, that color, that color?
Yeah, the biggest thing with the colors in the tape is that's all just subjective, so you know what the color is, and that's just so that we name them. The latex, knowing what the latex is in the call is the biggest thing. And so latexes will come in variable thicknesses from 25 10,000ths to 6,000ths in thickness. But when you dye them, you add color to them because they all come natural, kind of a creamy looking color. You put a dye in it, turn it black, or you turn it blue, or you turn it red. The consistencies of those dyes are different densities. And so you'll thin out latex or you'll thicken it up in density, not thickness. So they're all measured in thickness. So you can have a 4,000th thick reed, but yet when it's in purple, it's actually heavier. And so understanding the thickness and the color of your latex that's working that, once you start looking at calls from a latex point of view, then you can really look at all the different companies and figure out which ones you want. And then there's a stretch to it that changes. Obviously, higher stretch note goes up, lower stretch it goes down. Knowing what's in each one of those calls is what that's going to be. And so like when I'll switch to like that, what we call it the lock saw. It's for Locksaw River there, the headwaters of the Clearwater. that canyon is very steep and confined, and that when that water is raging and the lock saw is large and hard. And so I named the 6,000th latex call we have the lock saw after that. It's a very hard call to run. It takes a lot of air and a lot of force, but that air and that force increases volume, and it increases the like aggressionness of that, because it comes out hard, and it comes out very hard. And so a couple of years ago with Bill, when I was hunting with him, we had called these elk all day long, and we could not. I mean, and we'd kind of gone from elk to elk to elk and bound around, and we go back towards the truck, and the same bull that started off in the morning, he's still answering. And then we moved in closer, and nothing. I mean, zip. I mean, we can't get nothing. And I'm trying everything, going through the cow call scenarios, going through little bugles, big, whatever. I switched to put that lock saw reed in and went, and hit it like that. And that bull, bang, immediately went. And as soon as that bull went, the entire hillside opened up, because there was probably 50 cows in there with him. And there was a couple other bulls. And as soon as that change of aggression, that change of, instead of just the same thing over and over, I changed that up, and it triggered him. And that's something that, because that reed is made for that purpose. It's not the it's not the everyday call, but it serves a purpose. And once it triggered that elk, then the game went on. Now everything worked. And and that worked out really well. But having those changes, that change up, I start very soft, making little cow calls, make little things, little squeals and bugles. A lot of times, because I don't want to make a lot of sound, real loud sound, if there's an elk like 20 yards away from me. And so I make that little sound to see if I can hear something else. And I just kind of slowly graduate it up. And, I don't go, full crazy on things at the very end. But I did in that case. I was actually really frustrated because we were getting out to respond. You get them, you start closing that distance, and everything would go quiet, and you're trying to figure out, what to do. And the guide that was kind of working us on that ground was very much about keeping things quiet. And I'm like, okay, I'll follow what you want. And then at the end, it's the end of the day. So I'm like, bag it. I'm just going to rip it. And I ripped it. And the next 45 minutes was nothing but cow calls and bugles. And it was nuts. And when people talk about bugling like too loud or too aggressive, if you've ever listened to an elk, we can't match that. I cannot make sound that literally hits me in the chest. I can't do it. Elk do. And you feel it. It's like boom. It's like you hear that. And yeah, elk are loud, and they are aggressive, and you're trying to act like an elk. Don't act like a person. Don't act like a caller. Act like an elk.
Yeah. So when you guys are going through and designing these different calls, like for the different purposes, what's that process kind of like? Do you like make a bunch of like, okay, I want to have something that's a little bit less aggressive, so you go out and you try the different, like, okay, this stretch, or do you have like a specific way of doing it?
So, and this is a little backwards. A lot of calls companies, like in my son's case, he has a reed that he really likes, and he stretched it, and he gets that reed right. It's the North Fork. It's that purple latex. He built a call that works very, very well for him. He wants this reed that he can work and do a lot of different things on stage with, and that works for him. Other than that one call, every other call we did, I would sit at like those TAC shows or Northwest Mountain Challenge shows, and I would sit there and build calls. And I had people come to the booth, and they're like, "Yeah, I've never done this before," or maybe how do I try your calls? And I make a call, stick it in their mouth, and then you see if when they run it, are they getting too much? Are they pushing too much air? Or they don't have enough air to push to where they can't make it run? And I start tweaking it, and I'll move latexes down, I'll move latexes up, and I try to match that person's ability to call. And so then when I would find that certain latex and that certain stretch, I would make a mark, and I basically built bell graphs and it was literally thousands of calls I built. And I built those bell graphs, and I took the top of the bell graph and said, this is what most people can run. And we built a lot of those calls on that bell graph. And I tried to do it from a very low stretch and a low thickness all the way up to a very high stretch in thickness. And it's goofy because some people just naturally run on the top end of things, and some people don't. And you can't look at the size of the guy or the girl. I mean, it doesn't. I've had gals that I'm trying my light stuff, and they just blow right through it. And then you give them a big heavy read, and it's like, well, that works. It's just depending on how that person's biology makeup and how much air they use in their lungs and that work. And so we try to build it through that whole stretch, and we're really building those calls to try to fit more people, not necessarily the elk sounds, because I think you can make elk sounds with all of them.
So you kind of did like a big crowd research data, and then just you built it for people, not for elk, because it's up to the person to kind of like make it work.
Make it work. Yeah. Tony Gilbertson, he's a friend of mine, and he has we're going to hunt together this fall, and Tony's he won worlds. He's the reigning world champion bugler. But if you don't bugle like Tony, if you bugle more like Bo Brooks, who also won worlds, or my son who won worlds, you bugle like them, they don't bugle anything the same. Cody and Bo push a ton of air, and they are, it is like, wow. It's full contact bugling. We're like Tony and Corey, much more control. And it just kind of depends on your makeup. They both get to the same point, but it just kind of depends on how they practiced, how they learned, and kind of what works for them best. And so we're trying to build calls for the caller, which works best for them.
Yeah. So when you're going through this process of like, when creating different calls for all these different people, do you have like, do you have like this baseline one that you put everyone through and then build off of that? Or is it just
I did. I wish I could find that, because it's so variable. I do know, as a general rule, if I had a little girl that came 2 years ago to one of the shows. Her dad was an outfitter, a couple booths down. She was bored because she's like 6, right? And she's in a sports show for 3 days, and she doesn't know what to do. So she came down, and I started her with a very light reed, and trying to get her to learn how to control the reed first before putting air into it. And after doing that, and I told her, like, if you look at the way we market our stuff, it's on a scale. It kind of goes up and down. And I told her, you just graduate to each read up. And by the end of the show, she was 3 reads into our lineup. She came back this year, and she can run every call we have. And she's like 7. But learning control, I think, is a big thing. I think a lot of people, when they're bugling, want to push a lot of air through first. And that can be, you're going to get a sound, but until you know how to control that sound, you're not going to get the sounds you want. Or if you can start with a really light read, really light stretch, and just control your air to the minimal amount of air you can use with the lowest amount of volume. Because to be able to call with no volume is the most control you're going to have in calling. And so being able to do that, start there, and then graduate yourself up with more air each time, and do it with control. It'd be a little bit like golfing. You go out there like I do, and you try to swing as hard as you want. You're not necessarily gonna, sometimes you'll get that connection.
Yeah.
90% of the time it's going to be slicing off into the highway. And so if you can learn that control first and then working way up, so starting low and working high. But the crazy thing is there's some people that just can't do it. They're just naturally pushing out more air, and they just eat reeds up. So you have to have that heavier reed. You can usually hear it. As soon as they put it in their mouth, you'll hear it, because you'll see them just blowing the reed out. And it's like, oh yeah, you definitely need a heavier latex.
Yeah. So one of the questions I really was hoping, so I know a few people that are kind of like this, and they, for some reason, they just cannot use a diaphragm call. Is that where that enchantress that Slayer sells comes into play?
Yep, that is, and that's when Bill and I first started, or this whole adventure on looking at elk. The push was for the reeds, because the reeds, a lot of people use them, and it's kind of where you graduate to. But the reality is, there's a lot of people that just can't use reeds. And I told them, I said, if you want to really make money, let's try to figure out how to make this reed work where you're not putting it in your mouth. There's nothing you're sticking in your mouth. It's all just blowing out air like you're blowing out a birthday cake. And so that's how that came to be. And it's definitely, I hate, in a way, we've kind of become a one-trick pony, because that call sells a ton, and there's a lot of people that use it, and it's a great call. It's one of those things. As a new company, we put a lot of money back into that, trying to keep that thing, available. But that is kind of what we're known. We've really become known for that enchantress call. And
Yeah.
all it is just, we've made the mouth external. You just add air to it and run the pressure switch up and down on the reed, and it works. The crazy thing is that, when we first made it, we made it to bugle, and we were looking for the bugle thing. And what happened was, we realized right away that it cow calls so well. I think from a cow calling thing, it is, in my opinion, one of the better cow calls on the market. You take it off the tube and run that, and it's super easy to run, and it makes great cow call sounds. It just does. And that was one of those things. Was like, well, that's a nice benefit, because now we have one call that cow calls and bugles, which most externals on the market are either cow call or bugles, and ours
100%. Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at it, that was one thing where, like, I know as a person who just got into hunting, I've had to figure out the diaphragms, and I'm still figuring it out. Like, I'm not proficient at it at all, but I knew that, like, I saw the enchantress, and I was like, if I had known about that when I first started hunting, I don't know if I would have even dove into the diaphragms, because you get a 2-for-1. You have a really good cow call, and then you get that pressure control. And I think that, like, pressure control is crazy, because there's other things on the market, you just blow air at bugles, but just like to be able to control that pitch is wild.
Yeah, and that's been a really cool thing it's been a big thing for us. And it's so cool to see people. We have a guy that he got kicked he was an outfitter, and he ran diaphragms for years, got kicked in the face by a horse, and so he broke his jaw, broke his palate, basically broke everything, and he can't hold a reed in his mouth anymore, because of everything's false. And Enchantress gets him back in the game. I also look at it, if you live in a state like Nevada, where if you draw, you can't put in for another 7 years. At some point, do you really practice calling elk for 7 years, hoping to get another tag? Then it's a way that people, when they do draw, can get into the game quickly and be proficient and be able to kill elk, call elk in. Now, on the other side of the coin, I will say this, that the Enchantress to me is a starter thing. The body of work that you can do with a diaphragm once you become proficient with a diaphragm is huge. Bo Brooks calls in snow geese with it, and calls in woodpeckers and everything else. A diaphragm can be used to call so much stuff, that being proficient with a diaphragm is a good thing. It's just, if you're not hunting every year, you're only hunting every 4 or 5 years for elk, it may not just warrant putting the time in. I've been calling elk with a diaphragm for over 40 years. And so, and it's a process. It's not, I still work on my craft, so to speak, trying to get better. I think it's not a destination. It is a process of learning that a diaphragm is. So you don't just put it in your mouth and say, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Did you guys like have like a hallelujah moment, kind of like when you're getting through this, where you're like, oh wait, this could be a really good cow call too? Or was there like just kind of gradual build up?
No, so Matt is the engineer that was the one doing the actual computer drawings and building all this stuff. And we worked for a period of time, me showing him how to work a diaphragm and making that all work, and then him trying to conceptualize that and put it together and going back and forth. And he comes out with this product and goes, "Hey, I think this thing works." And then it's like, holy crud. I mean, it was right away. We can cow call with this. We can do anything we can with a diaphragm, except for it doesn't grunt real well. But it 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 ran and I told Bill, I said, we just may have invented the next hoochie mama. Because it's a pretty easy to operate thing, and it, unlike the hoochie mama, which is a little more rhythmic, like bang bang bang, because you can vary the pitch and the tone and the length and all that stuff with the call with your air. It's a lot more variable, and so I think it has a lot more upside that way.
Yeah. That was one thing I was like, that, I mean, I for years was like, that would be the perfect thing. If you have a call, you could just go like, you have your bugle and then you pop it off and then you have your cow call right there and it would work great. And like after seeing the Enchantress, I was like, that's exactly it.
The other thing that we've seen is you get a hunting party, there's 3-4 people in the party. You have one guy that's really good at calling, and so he ends up being the caller, and he never ends up being the shooter. And what's going on with this is, with that Enchantress, that guy can give the Enchantress to a guy that's not as good, and he can still call an elk, and it allows everybody in the party to be able to hunt. And we've had a lot of people have come forward and said, "Yeah, I'm the caller, and I'm never able to get the elk with this thing. He can call now, and so now I'm able to actually jump in there and try to shoot too."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there like a specific product at Slayer that you think is like your favorite?
Yeesh, favorite. The reeds, obviously the reeds are what I use the most. I mean, and that's with turkeys and the elk thing. The reeds, it's what I use. The tube is something that the acrylic thing is something that I think we built, and I think it's got a lot of upside. And I will say this: we're working on other things with it that I think might improve it and do some things differently. And so I'll say this too: the thing with acrylic is that other materials, metals, other materials, they all change sound, and everything has a positive and everything has a negative. Acrylic is one of those things that doesn't alter the sound. It amplifies it, but it doesn't alter it. So whatever you're putting into it won't resonate differently. And so I think acrylic is for us, it's a big thing. That's why you use it for all the duck and goose calls.
Yeah.
It's, as far as temperature and all the other things, it is very consistent. It's wet, it's not going to absorb, and become dense. It's going to maintain what it does. And we're definitely working the acrylic side of things, and that's because the Slayer started off as a duck call company, and so they're just Bill's tooled to deal with acrylic. That's what he works in. So down the road we're working on things. Definitely would like to push some of those things through. A lot of ideas with calls and things, and of course you're never satisfied, right? So when you sit there and say,
can't be.
"What's the thing I like?" Everything I like, I want to improve everything.
For sure.
And then as soon as I improve it, I'm going to try to improve it again.
And then we kind of talked about like bugle tubes a little bit, but it seems like the last like 3 to 4 years, bugle tubes have been the thing that everybody is like, I'm going to reinvent it, whether it be metal tubes or wooden tubes, or like, do you think that it's going to keep going that way, where like people just keep coming up with new material?
I think it will. I think at some point, I mean, there's an end game, right? Like, it's the price point. When you're getting into a bugle tube that is costing a lot of money, I was a cop. I didn't make a lot of cash.
Yeah.
And so to drop a couple $100 on a tube, I don't know if it was necessarily worth it. And I'll cut my own throat as a manufacturer. Last year, my wife's elk that I talked about that we killed, the one that sounded like the pterodactyl.
Yeah.
I was out with my brother and my wife, and we were going out, and I was in the back of the truck, and we were about halfway out to where we were going to go. And I said, "Hey, can I borrow your tube? Because I forgot mine back at home." And he's like, "Tube, you're the guy that's supposed to bring the tube. So, because you're the Slayer guy and you're supposed to bring that. So I didn't bring mine." And so we used Lipton iced tea bottles and cut them out and bugled that elk thing with those Lipton iced tea bottles.
Nice.
And that was, those cost 99 cents after I drank the tea out of them.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say it sounded the best. It wasn't the best, but again, at some point,
Yeah.
I
mean, you're paying for aesthetics at a certain level.
And I say at some point everybody's trying to be the best they can. And so you're trying to do the best you can, trying to develop all that. But if you're, when you start price pointing the average hunter out of things, that's, and I really don't like that. I think we need to stay within the average hunter's price point. It can't just be a sport for the rich.
Yeah. I mean, I think my first bugle tube was one of those ones that had the little blue bands.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah.
And I think if I probably dug through my garage hard enough, I could still find it in there somewhere.
So that call came out of Abe and Sons calls. They were out of Oregon, and they developed a little bucket that you stretch the latex over and stick it on there. And then Primos tried to make it better by making that blue band, which was pre-stretched and did all that. But yeah, that call, I used an Abe and Sons. I used the Power Bugle. I used, again, going back to that, trying to find the right sound. I used whatever I could find to make the sounds I wanted. And so I think that's big, different materials, I am kind of big. It's like the metal tube. Yeah. The one that actually, so that idea came out, and I'll say I was there when the metal idea came out. But Abram Summerfield is a kid that works. He's my son's age. He's 30. He was working at Night Force, and he took that idea from Rocky and kind of developed it up at U of I, and then ultimately sold it with Dirk. They're over there at Phelps. Did that. Those kind of things. That tube that metal sound goes a long, long ways. But and it's just like the wood sound. The wood sound has a great bass. Everything has its place. But everything also has drawbacks. Wooden tube doesn't have the volume to reach a long, long ways, and a metal tube is getting close. Is going to sound a little like metal. And so there's a place for everything, and I think that's where the experimentation with different things and trying to make things better. I think from a personal standpoint, I think the market right now is trying to shrink things back like they were when I was younger. We've gone the big baseball bat things. They're big and cumbersome. And I think trying to go to a smaller size, I think that's definitely something that the market's moving towards.
Yeah. I will say, from my experience, as a novice caller, I think that's even being generous on my abilities. But when I tested out the metal ones. I've never used the wood, and I've tested out now the acrylic and the plastic. I did find that the different tonages, I did prefer the acrylic more because it was a little more unaltered. And I feel like it was pretty valuable though to test out all the different materials and just kind of see, oh, it actually does make a difference.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing. I said, why do you choose Slayer over somebody else? I mean, I don't know if you do. You try to pick and choose what you like the best out of things. And so you do that. The acrylic, definitely in my mind, is like what you're saying. The acrylic does not alter sound. It amplifies it, which is a good thing. It's also the other thing we're able to do in that tube is we're able to shrink the actual hole size that you're blowing into to be small. It goes from a big opening to a small opening. You can't do that in an injected molded anything because it's all the same external diameters.
Yeah.
If you start shrinking it down to that 1/2 inch, the handle becomes brittle and can break. And so it's a harder thing to do. So with acrylic, we start with 1.25 inch stock piece of acrylic.
Mhm.
We can bore the 1/2 inch hole and then funnel it in to where you can compress that air. And I think that makes a big difference that way too. But the best thing is just the fact that it's going to amplify that sound when it goes into the tube.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't hurt that it looks really cool.
Yeah, no, it does. Well, that's how I met Bill. Was Cody saw the shiny things on the desk,
Yep.
and they're pretty, and he sucked right in.
Yeah, that's how I approached you guys over in TAC. I saw this handle, like this
Mhm.
right here, and I was like, that looks super
That's
cool.
cool.
I'm going there.
The cool thing with that handle, though, so again, that's a limited run. We initially had a bunch of those, and that's kind of what we were using, but we're not able to find that acrylic anymore with the mesh in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is going to be that's in a couple of years, nobody's going to be able to find that, and you're going to have a
Nice.
limited copy.
I love the mesh, like the look, the like
Yeah.
snake skin kind of look. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I have that yellow one too. That yellow one is the one I like the most.
Yeah, we both bought one at TAC, so
Yeah, I like it. And everybody's like, "What's yellow? It's gonna like scare the elk away." I'm like, "Well, actually, there's some yellow grass, but if he sees this yellow tube, it's too late.
yeah.
It's he's way too close before he sees my tube and has to run away." So
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I bought it for the looks. I had no idea the actual like tonage differences that I would actually find. But after testing, I was like, oh, this actually sounds better and it looks cool. So it was like a perfect little like impulse buy that worked out very well.
Yep.
I appreciate that because we definitely are proud of it. And it was our first thing we threw out there on the market as a Slayer elk call was that tube. And it looks good, but there is a purpose for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
And
durable
it's really
too.
cool, man. Oh, sweet. Huge fan. If you have someone that wants to buy like their first bugle tube, would you recommend the acrylic or would you like tell them to go with if like say they know how to use a diaphragm, like the acrylic or the plastic, like to get that difference of opinions?
Well, I would if somebody is looking to hunt elk this year and they've never used a diaphragm call, I'm going to tell them to use the Enchantress, and then ultimately they're going to be able to call. I'm going to tell them try to find a reed that fits them as far as the way they can get sound out of it, and then I'm having practice in that plastic tube because it's going to work. I mean, we had plastic tubes forever, and so use that. Get proficient with it. Once you find your proficiency going up where the reeds become the thing you're using, then you can then move into an acrylic tube or some of the we hopefully by that time we'll have something else on the market too, because we are trying to develop other stuff, and the acrylic thing is definitely our thing. So moving into something like that, which but definitely use the Enchantress, get out hunting, make some good calls, do that, practice. A year might not get you the abilities you need, because this is a lot. If you're going to hunt elk, it's kind of a lifetime process.
Yeah.
And, just treat it with a long game and just keep working it and you'll get it. I mean, it just comes over time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up on that. I truly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Anytime. I mean, let me, if you ever, whatever, just keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
Need anything on the elk call things or any kind of whatever, just let me know.
Definitely. And where's the next, like, are you guys going to be doing more expos around or any events?
My next expo is the game. It's the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yep.
I am leaving 22nd. And I'll be out hunting. I'm hunting my wife first, and then I'm hunting with Tony Gilbertson after that. My brother and Mel Stoudemire. Played in the major leagues. He's a guide there on the Clearwater now. Gonna try to get them elk, and then I'm gonna try to hunt my tag a little later in the season. But yeah, from about the 22nd to the 30th, I will be I'll be moving, and I will look much different. I'll look skinnier and more scrawny and more hairy and all that stuff by September 30th.
Well, I have
Perfect.
one last question for you.
Yes.
When you and your son are hunting, who's calling?
If he's shooting, then I'm calling, and vice versa. So I mean, we definitely mix it back and forth. Although I will say, there are times we will call at the same time too. We do a lot of back and forth calling, back and forth.
Nice.
Cody is very good at calling, and he's very good. It's nice having him available, and so to be able to call, if you have two good callers, this is a technique that works. Is you don't have some elk just for whatever reason aren't responding, and two callers call back and forth like they're calling to elk. That turns elk on a lot. When there's lulls, that kind of stuff works, and you have somebody like Cody on the other side, that helps a ton. But yeah, I called his elk in last year, so
nice, right on.
Oh yeah, I was for sure. Perfect.
Cool.
Sweet. All right. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, it's good talking with you guys.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Time.
I hope to see you around soon.
Yep. Nope. We'll keep in touch.
Definitely.
Yep. Happy hunting.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Let's see. How do we?
Thank you guys for listening to the Hunt Swiftly podcast. This time with Joe McCarthy of Slayer Calls. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys got a new insight into elk calls, diaphragm calls, and elk hunting in general. If you liked this episode, make sure you give it 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon. Hit the like if you're listening on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, wherever you guys are listening from. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. This is a good one. Joe's such a cool dude.
Yeah, remember, if you guys are in the market for any kind of calls, turkey, duck, elk, go check out Slayer Calls. Me and Swifty are definitely going to be using them this season.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Look at this cool bugle tube. How do you not like this bugle tube? And for all the people on Spotify, go look up the Archangel bugle tube. You won't be disappointed. Get the mesh before they're out. You can be a cool kid like us.
So yeah.
Or if you don't know how to call really well, check out the Enchantress.
Yeah. So massive thank you to Joe. Thank you to Slayer, and yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast.